plan for today is to talk a little bit about reconciliations in Concur, because I've had a lot of people that have needed like one-on-one help sessions with reconciliations, and I don't want to just talk about the entry side. I also want to talk about a review or approver side, because I know some of you guys are reviewers and approvers, and you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at, or I don't understand this. So I want to just show both sides briefly. Okay, so I made a little checklist, and I can show you that too. And I can share this on our Concur site if it's helpful for you guys, if you really want it. But just the stuff to check in the header, and the stuff to include in the expense line items if you're an entry person. These are just brief little checklists that I made, but I'll talk about them while I go over here to Concur. So I have let me go to expense. I have a reconciliation that I've been working on for January, so I'm going to use it as an example. If you didn't have one, you can create a new one. You can also, let me go back here just for a second. You can also go to your expenses, which I just have some pending ones in there, but you can go to your expenses and you can select all of them or some of them, and you can, sorry, didn't mean to open that. And you can move them to that reconciliation report you've created or a new report and start that way. Either way you want to do it, but let's just go into the January reconciliation. Okay, so when you start the report, the header information, there's a few things you want to check. So first of all, you want the trip name to contain something about the reconciliation process. So reconciliation there's somewhere. What else you put in there is up to your unit, however your trip naming convention is, but you do want to include reconciliation because it is a reconciliation. You want the travel start date and end date to just be the last day of the month. It can be last working day, it doesn't matter, just towards the end of the month. Yes, it is the same date for both because it's a reconciliation. You're not actually filing meals or hotels or for yourself trying to get CONUS. So it doesn't matter. The date doesn't matter. It's just the last working day of the month is what I usually use. Your trip business purpose should be centrally held card. Trip type, it should reflect what you actually have. So if you have international charges, they will have to be on a separate reconciliation from in-state and out-of-state charges. So that's the only one that you absolutely have to do on a separate reconciliation. If your accounting department is really anal about having everything exactly to the right GL account, then you'll have to separate in-state and out-of-state as well. I generally just use in-state unless it's international, because the GLs are in the same house. So it just makes sense to me. Budget entity doesn't really matter. You can have your base account on there because you can allocate expenses within the report. I know my department, we do travel for all kinds of groups. So I'm always allocating every expense to the correct account. The last thing you want to check is at the very bottom down here, claim travel allowance. You want that to say no, because you're not claiming meals or hotel for yourself. This is stuff that you did for other people. So, oh, and one more thing I forgot. Travel type is employee. It doesn't matter if you're doing guest travel, it's your card and your name and you're an employee. So your travel type should also always be employee. And I'll add that to the list because I didn't add that. Once you have all this stuff set, I need to move you guys out of my way for a second. Once you have that set, you can just click save or create if it's a new one. Oh, did I update something? Hang on, let me make sure I didn't update something before I do that, because I do not want to change anything. Okay, I just closed out of it. Okay, so once you have all that set and your report is created, you can add expenses again. You can go back to your expenses at the top here and you can check them and move them over to here. Or you can just click on add expenses and you can see available expenses. So you can check things off and add them to there. Either way, it works. When you get your expenses in here, you need to make sure that you're providing adequate information for whoever is reviewing these charges, and of course the auditors as well. In our case, I do all these expenses for other departments, and the people who approve may not know what these charges were for, who they were for, whatever. So you want to provide good information. So if I go back to my list over here, you want to make sure that you include who the charge is for, their name and the personnel number. You want to provide the reason for the charge. So if it's an event, if it's research, a conference, Whatever the reason they traveled for, you need to make sure you include that. If there was something specific, like a name of a conference, if it's like, I guess, travelers coming to Knoxville and that unit hosted it, then you want to, name that unit and the event, so that the person doing these approvals will know what their charges are for. So if the person requested a reimbursement for other expenses, out-of-pocket expenses, you need to provide the report key for their expense report. And I'll show you how to find that in just a second. You also want to attach documentation for the events to the receipt. So if it's a conference, you need to do the conference documentation just like you would in their expense report for their lodging or whatever. And then if the expense is going to be charged to a different account, make sure you allocate it and provide your contact information to the department being charged, because if they have questions, they're most likely just going to return the thing instead of looking to see who entered it and asking them a question about it. So if you put your information on there, your name, your email, or phone number, and say, please contact me with any questions, then they may be more likely to contact you rather than return the report over and over again. So if you need to get a report key, you can go to the print share option here and click on that UT detailed report with summary data. And up in the top is the report key. It's the last line in the header. So that is the number that you want to put in the report. I also suggest you can save that as a PDF and you can attach that as well. So if you already have an expense report for the person for their out-of-pocket expenses and you're just clearing the stuff that you paid for on your travel card, you save that PDF and attach it to your reimbursement or your reconciliation for that expense. And that way they don't have to go and look for it. The auditors will be much happier. They don't have to go and search for that and check out the other report. But if you don't have time, don't want to attach all the extra pages, you can just reference that report key and the auditors can use that to look it up. So that's on the entry side. And I'll show you one of these expenses really quickly and just show that it's got, in the comments, we've got the person and the reason. And I don't think I've attached, because I'm not finished with this yet, I don't think I've attached the conference. No, yeah, I didn't do this one. Okay, so I'll attach the conference documentation to this receipt. And note that you do not, I've had a lot of people that have tried to add things to the expense report by doing a zero expense line item, and you don't have to do that. You can just go to append and you can add other documents to that receipt, or you can go to the report level, which this part won't go to IRIS. That's the only catch. You can go to the report level and go to the top up here, manage receipts, and you can manage attachments and you can append there. So you can get this down where I can see it. I keep moving you guys around. I'm sorry. You can append the receipts here. I still can't see it because my screen's not big enough. At the bottom there, you can append. Okay, close that. Note that if you do it at the report level here, it does not go to IRIS. If you do it at the expense line item here, it does go to IRIS. So that's the major difference there. And I know I went through that really quickly. So if anyone has questions, it's a good time to go ahead and ask them and we'll go through that. If not, we'll move on to the review and approval side. I will say, so if you do a lot of airfares, this is a tip that I'd like to share. If you do a lot of airfares and you're looking for the airfare receipts, make sure that you have added your email to your travelers' profiles. So, go to their profiles and profile settings and make sure that you've added your email to their list of emails. And that way, when World Travel sends them their itinerary, it sends it to you too. So, make sure you add your email to their list. So contact for travel notifications, you want to make sure that's set to yes. So enter your email, click yes, and click OK. And that'll add your email to their profiles. And when you get their itineraries in your email, you can go in here and type in the amount of the ticket. And it's going to pull up exactly all the messages that you've gotten with that itinerary. So it's going to give you your receipt in there. It's a lot easier to look up that way than it is to look up, names or dates or whatever, or just, using @worldtrav.com in your search, which that works too, but then you have to filter through all the ones you've done. If you use the amount, it's very rare that you'll get the same exact amount for every ticket or even 2 tickets. So that's just another tip I use the amount of the ticket. You can find the receipt really quickly, and you can attach it. And of course, it'll have the name of the person too, so that way you can backtrack to who it was for and what account you should charge for it. Notice that all these expenses have allocated on them. So, they're all being charged to different departments. Remember, you can do that by selecting the expenses one at a time or all and clicking allocate. Lodging, you have to use that method. But other expenses like your airfare, conference registration, you can click on the actual expense and you can go to allocate at the top left there, little pie chart there. You can click there and edit, add, delete, whatever you need to do. So notice I've got one in here. You can change to percent, you can change to amounts, so on and so forth. So just remember to allocate if you have expenses that go to someone else. We've had it before. I've done it too, where I've sent the expense report through for a reconciliation and I forgot to allocate. And I'm like, oops, recall that. Got to charge it to the right accounts. So again, that's the entry side. Okay, so I want to go into the approvals review side, and I don't have a actual report that is a reconciliation, but I can just use a different report type and just talk about it. So I've had a lot of, since we do them for so many different departments, I've had a lot of people just return the trips back to me or expense reports back to me because they don't understand what the expenses are for, because it has so many other people's stuff on it, it has different accounts on it and stuff. So if you're a reviewer or an approver, when you open up an expense report, this is what it looks like. So those of you who haven't done review or approve can see this too and know what your reviewers and approvers are seeing. That might help you too. Let me make this really tiny. There we go. Sorry, I had to hide you guys. So this is what they see. The expenses are down here in a list, and you can expand them by clicking little arrows. If you click on the expense itself, the stuff for that expense shows up in this right-hand column, and it shows the comments they've made. It shows what they've entered into the fields. You also have the option to look at the receipt image. And you can also go up to here and look at receipts, and you can open up in a new window too. I like that view a little bit better. But for a reviewer or an approver, one of the main things you look at is your comments. You look at the comments first just to see, what it's for, who it's for. So this is the header level comments. This is the stuff that you put in that entry, that first box. It's not the comments that are on each expense line item. So that's why when we talk about, do I put the comment in the expense line item, or do I put it in the top level? Both, because different people are going to look at different places. So see, here is a comment that is just for this expense line item. So make sure you're putting that in both places if you're an entry person. But for your approval review process, if you're reviewing a reconciliation and there may be other charges for another account, the best thing you can do first thing is go to the print email option and open up that PDF. Okay, so if you open the report and you scroll to the very bottom down here, it's going to show who's charged what. Now, this one's all charged to one account, but if I open mine, and I can go back and show mine after this for my December reconciliation, there's 12 different accounts being charged for different things on my report. So if you're a reviewer or an approver, this is a good way to check what exactly you're supposed to be reviewing or approving. You look for your account, you look for the charges that are made to your account, and then you can go back. So say, this fuel charge was charged to your account, and that's the only charge on here that was charged to your account. So it's fuel. So, if you go back and close this, you can scroll down to that fuel charge and just look at that fuel charge. And you don't have to look at everything else on the report because it's not being charged to your account. If you're unfortunate enough to have to check all of them because they're all charged to your account, then, it'll take you a little extra time. But you definitely want to check things that have the yellow cautions, because that's your exceptions. And that's what we review in my office, is the exceptions. You want to make sure that they have a comment that explains the exception or the request for the exception. And if it's not really an exception, then you need to tell the person, that doesn't need to be an exception. I have a lot of lodging expenses lately that they're always marked exception when they're not. They're a conference rate, or they're within CONUS and they just didn't check the CONUS rate, things like that. And so they put them in as an exception, but they're not a true exception. So that's been a big one lately. But again, if you're a reviewer approver, go to that print email function first and look at what account is being charged for what expenses, and then go to those expenses and check it out. And if there's not enough information, it'll show you who actually entered the report right here. Contact that person before you return it. Speaking from experience, we put all the comments we can in there, but sometimes we don't have enough information, or we've just given whatever we've been given. Contact the person and talk to them rather than returning it, especially if there's multiple accounts being charged, because then you're forcing someone else to reapprove it over and over again. But that's what it looks like from the review side, the reviewer or approver side. So if you haven't seen that, it's an insight to their world and why they ask the questions they ask. I'll go back to my account and show you what that reconciliation looks like with all those different accounts on the print side. So if I go to my December one, which it's at the end of its line of being approved, and I go to print share. Let's see, you guys can see that pop up this time. Okay. And see this box down here, it's a lot different than the one I was showing you before. See, there's a total of 12 different accounts being charged for different things. And it'll show a breakdown down here of what amount is being charged to what account. So there's the breakdown of the amounts, and then above it shows which expenses are charged to that account. So that'll help if you're in a unit with a lot of different accounts and you're reconciling, or you're reviewing or approving the reconciliation, to just check it and see what you're actually looking at, who's being charged for what. And I hope that's helpful. Okay, well, I think we're done, and I will end just like Samantha does, because I think it's very important to say, be kind, because you never know what someone else is going through.